Greetings again, friends. Well, today I'm going to address this topic that I mentioned last time that I think should be addressed, especially in this election year. Now, unless you've been living under a rock, you are aware that this election is for real, probably the most important election of our lifetimes, because this election is going to deal with the issue of right and wrong, good and evil, light and darkness. I mean, it's that kind of election where you are having a very clear choice. If you don't like freedom, then you could choose the party that is not going toward freedom, that is going toward restrictions, regulations, taking away certain rights, mandating more mitigation in a pandemic, and keeping you in your basement. If you don't know what I mean. I don't like to get into the politics end of it because that's not the most important thing. But there are good reasons why you should speak out against any kind of a political position that takes away your freedom of religion, that takes away your right, which doesn't give you the responsibility to do your right, to live up to it. And in this day that we live in, it's pretty clear. Now, you may not like every aspect of a political person. You may not like Donald Trump. You may not like Joe Biden. You may not like either one. You may not want to vote for either one. But I'm telling you, if you vote for what the platform of the Democratic Party has, then you will be getting a lot more spending, a lot more things given to certain people, a lot less emphasis on law and order and releasing criminals and having illegal aliens come in and sanctuary cities and taking away more rights that we have. So really, there's only one way you should vote. If you love freedom, if you want to continue to live in prosperity and be able to do things that you choose to do and not have a government trying to control what you do, or a socialist system that makes it all even for everyone, regardless of whether they live up to their responsibilities. That's essentially socialism. There's problems with capitalism when you have an old sinful nature that causes people to be greedy and causes people to not care about others, and that's a problem. But we have a better system in capitalism in this country of the United States than we do for any other system, and the world proves it if you look at countries that have tried socialism and even communism. And philosophically speaking, this election really reminds you more of communist ideas in things that are being said. And certainly full-blown socialism, if you don't know better, you need to study it out and see. But as I wrote this article way back in 2008, and it was just before the election where Barack Obama was elected as the president. Now, that was a milestone in our country for what people wanted to see, which proves we're not really a racist country, by the way, but that continues to be used wrongly. And while there are problems, there are not the problems that are pushed every election cycle to try to point to racism being the problem. And I even deal with the race to prejudice. You should go back and look at that video too. But in this video, I'm talking about the article that I wrote where I called it Political Tragedy. And there's something here that I think you should think about in reference to why some areas are more conservative and some are more liberal. Why you have, it seems like in the United States of America, where it seems like the outer edges of our country are generally more left-wing liberal areas and the majority middle, and even in some of these states that are more liberal-minded, you have a lot of conservative positions. So why is that? Well, as I addressed in this article, I think there's some good things to think about and reasons for that. So this was written right before the election on 11/4/08, and it's called Political Tragedy. You may wonder why in the world I would bring politics into the subject of talking about tragedy. The answer is not that difficult to understand, though you will have to try to follow my reasoning here. First, let me say that I am writing this before the 2008 U.S. election results are all in and the race decided. The presidential winner of this election will not change what I am saying, though the voting of the nation will reflect the truth of what I am saying and give a barometer, pun intended, of where we are as a nation. I am talking about something that can be seen if you simply take a look at the education centers, such as a university setting like Virginia Tech, and the cities versus the more rural areas. Why is it that urban areas such as a city or even a university town tend to vote more left-leaning or liberal, while rural areas, agriculture, etc., tend to vote more right-leaning or conservative? It is not really that difficult to understand. While it is complex to consider every angle, it basically comes down to what I see as a real tragedy and what is breeding ground for other human influence tragedies. Crime is more common in the urban areas too. I mean, with what we have in our country, all of this rioting and looting and crimes that are committed and burning things down in certain places, it's primarily been in the cities. Now, because people are fleeing the cities, even because of these things, and because these people have been given more free reign in these cities, it is tending to get more into suburban areas, which is really concerning a lot of people too. So let me continue in this article to give the truth more of what I'm saying here. Much could be said here. I'll talk more about it in my upcoming book, which I have published now. But it comes down to what I see as man versus God. Do you find this hard to accept? Please follow my thinking here. When people gather together into a city environment, they will be less exposed to everyday examples of the beauties of creation. They will be more inclined to rely on their own thinking and will tend to be puffed up in collective pride, which is a heart problem every individual human being has. Those living in more rural areas are more regularly exposed to the landscape and variety of plants and animals. They also will have a better view of the heavens, in that there is less artificial light to interfere with a clear view. And wow, are they not amazing? Have you not seen some of the Hubble telescope pictures that go deep into space to see the majesty and glory of the universe? It is awe-inspiring. It is incredible. And to think of this earth being the privileged planet that it is in all of the universe to give the place where life can be sustained and where water is prevalent. It's just mind-blowing. But in a city, you could live under man's rule, not see any plants hardly, except for little plants you have in decorative areas and offices, not see hardly any of these beautiful heavens, because the light of the city blinds you from seeing the clear view. And I say here, this amounts to daily living and thinking more about God and even the limitations of man. That is, when you live in a rural area where you can see the heavens. You think more about God. You think more about how limited we are as human beings. It puts life in a more realistic perspective. Now, the university setting lends itself to a similar appeal to man versus thinking about God. And this is why most of our universities have gone more left-wing, liberally minded, because they get puffed up and they think more about men rather than God, our greatness, our views, our discoveries, and not the majesty of His creation. Education can lead one to believe that they have more answers, or it can lead one to realize that there is really a whole lot that we do not know. Now, if you're honest with education and learning, and you really focus in on learning about something, you really learn there's a lot more questions than you thought. And there's a lot more majesty and design and order to this universe, from the very microscopic level as far down as you can go to see, to the very macroscopic level that you can see in the heavens. Ironically, most of the early education institutions in America were founded to train people to pursue the various disciplines from a perspective of honoring God and even serving Jesus Christ. The foundations of our country are the key reason for its historical success. If you doubt what I am saying, just research the founding statements of the Ivy League schools. I believe it's 9 out of 11 were founded with Christian influence to promote Jesus Christ and whatever discipline that they did and the gospel of Christ. And boy, how far have we come? You think about Harvard and Yale and Princeton and all these places. I mean, most of them were founded because of they believed the one that first started was liberal, and so they founded another one to try to have a better place to go to educate people in line with this. But read those statements, those founding statements of those universities, and see. Now, I will be explaining more about this, and I did these things in discussing 2 particular lessons in my book, which are lessons 4 and lessons 8 in the top 10 lessons that I talk about. Now, friend, do you have all the answers? Do you think you have it all figured out? Now, many political leaders, commentators, and pundits think they do. Sometimes they get it right. Often they do not. They didn't get right the last election. All the polls, all the posters, very few people were right about what would happen when Donald Trump won, as he wasn't expected to, and was way down in the polls and the exit polls and everything else. So they think they know, but it floored them, and they've never recovered since. The question you should ask yourself is, am I focusing more on man or on God? God has not left Himself without witness, and you merely need to pay attention to the creation to see this. Will it take an act of God or tragedy to get your attention? Will you learn from the Creator and His creation? We have an objective witness that you can observe in the creation. We have an objective word from God in the Bible. We have an objective witness in the world through the historical entrance of Jesus Christ into His creation. Will you follow the changing winds of politics? Man-centered thinking will necessarily lead to tragedy. God-centered, biblical thinking will lead to peace and harmony. Which will you choose? Please contact me if you have further questions. Challenge me if you think I am missing something here. Seriously consider the truth I am saying and look at the Gospel tab, which I have on my website too, for the basic truths that can change your life. Now that's what I wrote before the election of Barack Obama in 2008. And certainly we've seen a lot since that time. And the truth here is still true as it relates to man versus God. Now, what is your position there? Are you basing your beliefs and thought process? Are your thought processes, are they being based upon what man seems to say, or the differences even, or what science says, when science, so-called, changes its mind all the time? I mean, even look at it related to this coronavirus, changing the mind about not wearing masks versus wearing masks. And now you're like anathema if you don't wear a mask. And there's debate about whether that's right or wrong, even before the coronavirus, good or bad, much less after it. But now everybody is politically correct to wear one now, so you almost have to, unless you're getting your hair fixed, I guess, in a salon. Whoops, well, or other people who have been called out in these cities that are man-centered, not having their masks on. So it's suspect and pretty hypocritical, it seems, in a lot of ways. But listen, you need to really think about this in this day and age. And I trust you will vote, and I trust you will take a stand, because if you don't get out and vote and pick a side and take a stand in this election, then when would you ever do it? Because we have a clear-cut choice. There's not even really any hiding of where people are. Oh, there's various opinions as to who's doing what and right, and there's still people trying to say they're doing the same thing and saying things they're not doing, not promising things as political people usually do and don't keep them. So that still goes on. That stuff is still happening, but I'm telling you, it's a clear choice if you just think a little and do your research. And if you put God first, you don't really have a choice here, because look what happened. Now look, I don't agree with any particular party to be 100% right, but when a party takes God out of their platform the way the Democratic Party did, and in their convention this year, when they purposefully remove God from the Pledge of Allegiance, you can tell, regardless of what they say, you can tell where their position is. So you really don't have much of a choice this year, and even choosing a party that is totally abandoned to socialism shouldn't give you much pause when you vote if you love freedom, if you don't want to have more tragedy in your life, which will happen from less law and order that takes place. So friend, I hope this video has challenged you, given you something a little more to think about, even in relation to how we have more conservative and more liberal positions in different areas of the country. And even we'll remember verses like in Proverbs where it talks about how that the people rejoice when there's a good person ruling. I mean, there's so many places we could go and think about in Scripture that talks about ruling and how it should be right. But friend, I want you to just think with me more. I want you to get out and vote. I want you to be involved this year. If you ever are going to be, I want you to take a stand and stand for the truth of Scripture. And if you like this video, I want you to share it with other people and subscribe to my channel and make sure you hit the notification bell so you'll be ready for the next video.